Inflation has been the buzzword of 2022. You have read it all over the news. People are talking about it. Governments and central banks are acting towards it. In fact, they have been doing a very infamous move, which is to raise interest rates. The Malaysian Central Bank, Bank Negara Malaysia, has also followed suit to raise the overnight policy rate, or OPR, from 2.25% to 2.5% on the 8th of September 2022. That was a hike from 2.25% back in July the 6th. For those who are less familiar, the overnight policy rate is basically the base lending rate for banks to charge their loan interest. Two key concerns that the general public have is that, firstly, is that things are getting more expensive while our income has remained the same. Isn't the government supposed to make our lives a little bit better by subsidizing or giving us more money? Why are they increasing interest rates right now when times are already very, very tough? The second thing is that how would this affect me? Hello and welcome to the BR channel, and today we are going to explore a little bit more about interest rate hikes, a brief breakdown on inflation, how does it affect you, and what can you do about it. Assuming you know a little bit fundamentals of economics, inflation can happen in either one or both of the following: either a cost push inflation or a demand pull inflation. Currently, we are facing the cost push inflation. How did this cost push inflation come about? You may have read it in the news, is that one of it is supply chain disruptions that have occurred around the globe, with two key factors that are affecting in the background. One of it is the infamous zero COVID policy that is implemented in China, and two is the infamous Russia-Ukraine conflict, which also caused oil prices to increase significantly. These disruptions have caused supply to not be able to catch up with the demand. Hence, it causes price to increase. This type of inflation is basically saying, hey, I don't have enough supplies right now, so if you want it, you have to pay more for it. If you can't pay more for it, then don't buy it. The disruption in supply chains are beyond the central bank's control. It's very challenging to intervene in the supply side of things because supply side policies don't work immediately. So for example, previously we had an issue with chicken shortage. So the government has actually banned the export of chicken, but in general that doesn't increase the supply of chicken. Another way that they can do, for example, if let's say they reduce interest rate or they give incentives for the chicken industry to produce more chicken, but those are just financial things. But even if the chicken industry, they have taken this money, they can't instantly produce more and more chicken like magic, because they will need time to, say, build a new factory, to get a new production plant, to get new raw materials, and most importantly, it takes time for the chicken to grow. Of course, it's not a video about how the chicken industry works, but you get the idea. Even if the government or central bank provide all these incentives to the suppliers, it can take months or even years to scale up their supplies. And by that time, the inflation problem could get even worse. On the other hand, it's easier to influence the demand side of things. When the central bank increases the interest rate, banks in the country will have to follow suit, either immediately or in a few days' time. So with this, they can see instant effect to the demand side of things. Theoretically, if people have less money to spend, then people would spend less. By the way, the government cannot just pump more money into the system to ease our lives, because that will make the inflation problem even worse. Because when people have more money, now we have a demand pull problem on top of an already existing cost push inflation. It will be a vicious cycle for the inflation problem, and inflation could really spiral out of control. And by the way, I think this is one of the reasons why employers can't just raise our salary as much as they want to, because this will also trigger another round of demand pull inflation. So in short, only these two persons can make this situation better or for the worse. So how will the increase in interest rates affect our day-to-day lives? A little bit of good news is that now with higher interest rates, the interest you get from depositing money into the bank gets higher. But let's be honest here, interest rate on savings are already very tiny to begin with. So even with this 0.25% increase, the effect wouldn't be noticeable. And more importantly is that borrowing interest rates are always higher than savings interest rates. Which leads me to the next point about loans. Now, most of us would definitely have loans, be it for your car, be it for your house, be it for your credit card, or be it for whatever other loans. If you fall under one of these three, be it either you have no loans, your interest rate is 0%, or if your loan is under fixed rate, then the interest rate hike wouldn't affect you. You can just live your life as this. But of course, do consider that if you are going to apply for a new loan, the interest on that particular loan will definitely be higher. If your loan is under variable rate interest, be prepared to pay more interest and more installment on your loans. Speaking of loans, that reminded me about properties. A lot of people have properties, be it for investment or own stay. For investment properties, with these higher monthly installments, your net rental income will definitely be lower, unless you can somehow pass on this increase in cost to your tenants. Another note though, theoretically, when interest rates are high, there will be less buyers for properties. And if the supply and demand rule takes place with lower demand, that would lead to lower property prices. But in reality, I don't think that property prices will be affected that much by any change in interest rates. Speaking about investments, I believe that if you invest in the stock market, your stocks likely will be affected as well. This part is a little bit technical. If the companies that you invest in have high amounts of debt, they will incur higher interest on these debts. With higher interest means lower profits. And with lower profits, that means lower valuation for that particular company. Even if, let's say, a company doesn't borrow any money to finance their business, their valuation will also be affected, especially if the discounted cash flow method is being used. Because with higher interest rate, that will increase the discount rate used, that will reduce the amount of discounted cash flow and hence lower valuation. So knowing all these effects that the hike in interest rates can have on us, what can we do about it? Well, honestly, everyone's financial circumstances are different, so there will not be one single method that suits everybody's needs. But here are a few general ideas that I can think of. Firstly, be aware of the loans that you take and the type of interest that you are paying. If the increase in interest rates will result in higher interest and higher monthly installments, you might have to tweak your budget a little bit so that you will be able to pay off your debt and not default on it. For investors like myself, we may want to review our investment portfolio to see if we want to divest, or if you think this is an opportunity to buy, then go ahead. Ultimately, we will need to find a way to increase our income source in a sustainable manner, because there is a limit to cost cutting, and the only way out is to increase our income. So to conclude, inflation has been problematic during this year, be it for ordinary people like you and I, or even for policymakers.
Things just got out of hand.
Hence, it is very important for us to know about the situation, to understand the rationale of why policymakers make their decisions, and the most important thing, understand our personal financial circumstances and maneuver around it, rather than just blaming other people. So what do you think about the inflation problem? Do you think there's other ways that we can do to cope through these trying times? Put your views in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe to this channel so you will know when I upload a new content. And with that, see you in the next one.